Peace be with us this hour of this day as we gather in this loving assembly of family and friends to say goodbye to Ron Banister. Today we gather to grieve Ron's dying and to celebrate his living. Today we grieve because Ron will no longer be part of our lives as he once was, and we gather to give thanks for the ways that his own life made our own lives richer. Let us shed tears if tears come, but remember that we must express our own feelings of loss in our own ways and in our own times, knowing whatever we feel, that those feelings are but a reflection of what Ron's life meant to our own. The flaming chalice is the symbol of the Unitarian Universalist tradition in which this congregation stands. We light this chalice this afternoon to remind us that we are gathered in a time and space made sacred by our love and our grief, and made holy by our values and hopes, our commitments, and the truths we cherish as good and beautiful. In the presence of death, we light this chalice because we believe that life is a miracle, nothing less than a miracle, that flowers bloom every spring, that living thing begets living thing, that we human beings emerge again and again from ignorance to knowledge, from hopelessness to meaning, from sadness to joy, and from grief to gratitude. We light this chalice because we believe that life is a miracle, nothing less than a miracle. Will you please join me now? And let us be together in reflection, meditation, and prayer. Let us open ourselves to that Spirit within us and amidst us, called by many names, but known to every human heart. We are grieving. There is an emptiness in our lives that wasn't there before. Among us today are those who have lost an uncle and a friend. And so we grieve. We are grieving for Ron and the experiences of life he will no longer have. We are grieving for ourselves and for our own relationships with Ron. It is difficult to let go of one who is loved. And so we lift up our hopes. We lift up our hopes for the healing of our own hearts, that our feelings of loss and grief will be smoothed by the achingly slow wisdom of time, into feelings of fond remembrance and deep gratitude for Ron's life. A life not lived without troubles, and like any life, a life not lived perfectly, but a life lived with joy and gentleness amid blessings. We lift up our hope that we may come to understand that in every life, no matter how short or how long, there is a completeness. And we lift up our hope that amidst our grief, we will remember the preciousness, the goodness, the beauty, and the miracle of our own lives. We lift up our hope that we may remember that love is stronger than death, and that on the far side of grief there is the possibility of new life for us all. With our hearts open to the mystery and miracle in which we live and move and have our being, we lift up these hopes. Amen. Let's now sing hymn number 123, Spirit of Life. Will you please stand as you're able? John and Diane will lead us. The words are up on the screen. A reading, Love Abides, by Barbara Pescan. Often we are found in our grief and comforted, calmed by some kindness, brought alive again by beauty that catches us undefended. Even when the sun is most thin and far, even at the hour the storm is at its height, we can go through. Renewal rests within sorrow. Love abides, even beyond anger, beyond death. We are held and embraced, invisible but infinite, moving within all creation, between wholeness and fragmentation, moving always towards the one. Small joys and great sorrows pass, and we, with steps uncertain, move on to whatever is next, but continually seen, heard, held by life infinite and remote, intimate and abiding. Love does not let us go. Ronald Alan Banister was born July 30th, 1941, to Mary Elwell and Guy Banister in Aurora, Illinois, and died at his home in Cary, North Carolina on December 4th, 2022. He was the youngest of 4 children. Ron is survived by his nephews Steve and Bill, as well as their families. When Ron was a young child, his parents bought a cottage at Kelly Lake, Wisconsin. Ron spent his summers there enjoying the roller skating rink and activities on the lake. After graduating with a degree in mechanical engineering at the University of Illinois, Ron decided to design a boat dock and pier in several sections so it would be easier to take out and put in every year. He would send his draft plans to his dad, who would make changes and then send them back. This process took several months until both engineers agreed on a final draft, and they built it together. After college, he was hired by Square D in Milwaukee. Ron and Kathy Murphy met while folk dancing in Milwaukee, and they started dating 2 months later. They were married at the Unitarian Church in Brookfield, Wisconsin in 1986. Ron enjoyed science fiction and was a fan of Doctor Who, Star Trek, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and Red Dwarf. On his honeymoon, he and Kathy attended the Doctor Who convention in Madison, Wisconsin, where they got autographs from 2 of the doctors and saw a Dalek. When Square D moved to Knightdale, North Carolina, Ron was asked to move with them. He and Kathy moved to Raleigh in October 1988 and quickly became active in this congregation. Ron did not often attend worship services at UUFR, but he very much enjoyed game nights, the New Year's beach trip, auction events, circle dinners, the genealogy group, and many other activities. Ron especially enjoyed attending SUSI, a summer program every year. He participated in the morning fun run, workshops, dancing, and cabaret. He was always trying unsuccessfully to get Beth and Jim Flanagan to join the fun run. Ron's mother died at age 90, just short of her 70th wedding anniversary. At that point, Ron's dad was confined to a wheelchair, so Ron and his sister Brenda made the decision that their dad would come to Raleigh to live with Ron and Kathy. They took great care of Guy and often invited friends to share a meal with them so that he would have interaction with other people. He lived with them for 3 years until he died at age 97. Though Ron and Kathy divorced after 25 years of marriage, they still maintained an amicable relationship. Ron was always kind and caring in his relationships, and he could be very generous at times. Beth Flanagan remembers that when her granddaughter Amy lost all of her tools to theft just after starting her own one-woman construction business, Ron made a very generous contribution to her GoFundMe site. Throughout his life, Ron's interests included metaphysical subjects, science fiction, collecting coins, genealogy research, collecting quartz crystals. You can see some of his crystals downstairs at the reception, and dancing. He especially loved folk dancing and dancing to rock and roll music. For all of these things, Ron will be remembered. For all of these things and more, he will be deeply missed. At this time, Ron's friend Paul would like to say a few words.
My greetings and blessings to the family and all the friends who've gathered. Now, will this work for me? Our printer at home has been complaining for a couple of months now that it's low on toner, but it kept printing just fine until today. So I'm reading from here. I've had a good amount of time to think about what I would say today, but it's been difficult. I've had a hard time settling down to it, and it wasn't until really last night that I got into some kind of flow. There's that desire to be wise and witty. I don't know how well. I didn't seem to have a lot of inspiration. So when I first moved to the area, so it would have been 91 or 92 when I first visited this fellowship. And I'm pretty certain, so this is a long time back, it was Ron and Kathy had invited us out. So I was with my first wife at the time to lunch, and it was just remembering that as this is a very kind thing and welcoming thing. Now, I didn't get connected really with the fellowship until a good bit later. Much water passed under the bridge. But then around 15 years ago, I decided to start a spiritual study group, a class, to pass on some of what I'd been learning on more esoteric topics. So the other phrase you heard then was New Age. It doesn't seem very new today. So I put a notice into the newsletter, and Ron was one of the who showed up for the first class, and he and another friend, David, are the only two to have continued through all the years since. And that's partly, people move away and stuff. And over time, I came to realize Ron probably knew much, if not all, of what I was teaching, but he didn't come across that way. And it wasn't that he didn't participate, he participated fully, but he was allowing me to present and lead. And although he knew a lot, he was there as a student, ready to learn more. Now, these classes started when my oldest son was just a baby, and at first we could continue to have them in our house, and babies sleep a lot, and otherwise are easy to keep entertained. But as Kripal, who I'm glad is here with me today, got older, it became more difficult. And so we started meeting at other friends' houses, and eventually it became Ron's house was the regular meeting place. So I came to love that space, the way he kept, there was some clutter, but it was generally very neat and clean, and I appreciated his taste and decoration. I had requested and appreciate that he had a TARDIS tissue box, and you see it sitting out here, so that is going to be my remembrance of him, and I appreciate the family allowing me to take that. So my wife Gurmeet and I would host holiday and other gatherings from time to time and include those in the class. So Ron also became a friend of our family. And so to Gurmeet and Kripal is here, and our other son Harman, who's off on scout camping. They're going to the Tank Museum today. And he and I would just go out for dinner from time to time and just to chat and enjoy a meal together. And so about our classes, we would start with a check-in, sort of how are you doing, what's been going on in the last couple of weeks, or actually at first it was every week. And so you can imagine after 15 years of checking in, you get to know somebody pretty well. And it's, so that's just sort of giving you the depth to which my relationship is with him. Now, as my boys were getting older and more time into family and other choices I was making in my life, I stopped getting out to other social gatherings. I wasn't attending the fellowship so much. I've been blessed with a fair number of good friends and some who have stuck with me through all this time. But for the last 5 or 10 years, Ron is one of the few who I've seen on a regular basis. It was every week for a while, but then every other week. So, I didn't know Ron, back in the day. I don't have crazy stories to tell of youth. But as I have aged, he became one of my closest friends. He was always good-natured, has a big smile and a hug to greet me, and had a great hearty laugh when something tickled him. And we developed a trust. As our classes became smaller, the few of us that were continuing to gather really knew and could, trust each other with somewhat intimate information. Like some of the medical stuff he was going through. It's not things you would share with just anybody. And he had told us that he had this heart condition, and he was choosing not to get it treated. felt he had had a good life, and it was good quality life, and he was at peace with that uncertainty. And so he's willing to accept that risk. And so it wasn't totally surprising when we got news of a sudden passing. And I'm thankful that it didn't, he didn't not suffer through extended illness, pain, or debilitation. And he had a certainty that his soul would continue on beyond this life and continues on to grow and evolve. I don't think he really feared death. But despite what I knew and believed myself, his death has just shaken me to the core, more than anything of late. I mean, including some of my family. I was supposed to be about Ron, but I had to express the power of his friendship to sort of say what it is that was treasured of him, and the impact on me. I'm actually kind of adrift right now. So the book we were studying in our group when Ron passed was on how to be great. That may seem like hubris, but the point is not necessarily to achieve fame and notoriety, but to be great in what you do and how you live your life each day, how you interact with family and friends in doing everyday things. And for me, he was a great friend. I'll miss him always, and that is not a little thing.
Thank you, Paul. Is there anyone else who would like to share a memory or a story?
Thank you, Paul. That was really quite touching. My printer worked. So I just wrote a few things that I wanted to say briefly. What to say about Ron? It's very difficult, and you had the difficulty too. He was a very unique individual. It was such a shock to learn of his instantaneous, maybe partially expected but totally unexpected checkout. He got to avoid all the angst about dying, and he just went and did it. Which was fortunate for him, not for us. As Woody Allen once said, I don't mind dying, I just don't want to be there when it happens. So Ron did love mysteries. So I have a feeling he may be laughing at us as we try to unravel all the loose strings that he left for us to deal with. He had a quirky sense of humor, as Paul referenced in the Doctor Who interest, and a real interest in all things mysterious, whether UFOs or psychic things or aliens or conspiracy theories. He liked all things that would put him in this questing mode. But he also really had a serious side. He was an active member of the Milwaukee Theosophical Lodge many years ago when I first met him. And then I was national president of the Theosophical Society for some years, and he would attend meetings for that too. So he was one of the first contacts when my husband David and I came down to the Raleigh area. And so we have known him more closely for the last 10, 11 years. He was a very present and faithful member of our local theosophical study group. And we have, including me, 6 people here from our group, sitting over here in the middle, because we all miss him. And certainly his searching mind, which all of us who knew him knew how he had such a searching mind, was a good fit for theosophy, because the motto of the Theosophical Society is there is no religion higher than truth, and he was always searching for truth in some way. His very meticulous approach to all details kept him involved with us as we had various studies. He liked to lead studies, especially with charts and precision. And he was also a very reliable treasurer. So his meticulous mind also kept him busy as a coin collector and a collector of many things, genealogical studies and so forth. And he enjoyed his participation with the UU fellowship people that he knew. So whatever he did with gusto, really. So I do share with all of you here a real sense of loss, but also an appreciation of the blessing of having had Ron in our lives in whatever ways we did. Earthly life is a blessing, but so is the ability to shed the outworn cloak when it is time. So, Ron, here's to you. Enjoy your new adventure, and remember us as we remember you.
Thank you so much. Would anyone else like to share a memory or reflection? Would you like to stand here or down here? Either one. Okay, come on.
Hi, I'm Sharon. I'm one of his nieces. I don't have a printer, so I wrote it out manually. When you think of Ron, I asked my kids, other family members, name one thing about him. And it was kind, soft-spoken, spiritual, unique, a little nerdy. He reminds us of Ned Flanders from The Simpsons. Howdy ho, neighborini. And he was very intellectual. If there was something that he was into, no matter what it was, like everyone else saying, he went with gusto. If he knew you liked a certain topic, like for me personally, it was the weather. He bought me this really cool book on all weather systems, and I truly, truly enjoyed it. My husband, Bill, his nephew, one of his first memories of Uncle Ron was he was about age between 5 and 7, and he comes downstairs to get a bowl of Raisin Bran, and there's Uncle Ron in the living room in his tidy whities doing yoga. And this little boy was like, what is going on? But a quick nod saying, hey, and then Bill just goes off to the kitchen. Years later, Uncle Ron actually went to one of Bill's shows that he was in a band, or still is in a band, and he's standing out there on the dance floor with me, and he's listening to his nephew play, and everyone was up dancing and having a good time, and he just looked at me, and he's like, this is awesome. And I went, yeah, it is. He also told us that he was going to live to be 110 years old. You lied. He goes, positive thinking, just keep positive. I'm going to be 110. He was steadfast in his beliefs, and he held on to them very tightly, whether or not you believed in it or not. He never wavered. He watched his nephews grow up and become the men that they are now. And same with his great-nephews and nieces, and his great-great-nephews and nieces. We were able to enjoy a special day when our youngest son was married in Nashville, and Uncle Ron came out, and one last trip on the dance floor. It was great. He joins his parents, his brother, our beloved mother, our beloved brothers, Marty and David, and I hope that he comes back as something as beautiful as his soul. However, if you're the bumblebee that's hanging out in the backyard, could you please give us some space? Because you're kind of like in our face. There was a tree that was in a pot that just, like a fir tree, that just fell from another tree as a sapling, and it grew into this planter. And the neighbor lady, well, I can't think of her name. Tammy? Debbie. So she took it, and she planted the tree in the backyard, and she named it Ron. And Steve took out a little sculpture that Ron had of praying hands, so he's in the backyard, and we will miss him terribly. So from my hand to my heart to my head, namaste, Uncle Ron. Live long and prosper.
My name is Dan Steens, my wife Sherry Block, and remember at our wedding, which was downstairs here in '98, that Ron was one of our readers. He always had a big smile, a grin on his face, and he's always had so much positive spirit. I remember when I had leukemia way back in '91, he and Kathy would come and visit me several times while I was there, and Ron brought and set up a VCR for me, because back then the hospitals just didn't have much other than TV to look at. And I remember how grateful I was for that help. And I also remember a trip that he and Kathy and I think it was maybe another person and me went to the Edgar Cayce Center. And it was really eye-opening for me. And as the obituary mentioned, the metaphysical part, that just didn't have much experience with that. So Ron was really interesting. He just had such a wide interest.
He also had an incredible memory for birthdays. Every birthday, we had a card. We will miss him. Rest in peace, Ron.
I'm Jerry Meisner, and unless you are a long-time person in Raleigh, you don't remember the highway, or actually I should say road, that went from Raleigh east. And Ron and I used to commiserate about driving along this road when you had to pass through Lizard Lick and other beauty spots along the way to go to work. And we always enjoyed laughing about that. But what I remember most about Ron, of course, is his smile. He had just such an open, warm smile. And when he smiled at you, his whole face lit up. And that's just is wonderful to remember. I remember how Ron was so loving and caring of his dad, and that was something that we had in common. I was not part of the genealogy group here, but I recognized the fire in Ron's eyes because my dad spent his whole life working on genealogy and researching. And so I would just like to share with you that I picture Ron as I picture my dad, up there or out there somewhere, meeting all these ancestors they spent so much time trying to identify and find, and just having a really good time.
I hope that all of you will continue sharing stories and memories and reflections during the reception downstairs. But now, let's spend a few moments in shared silence, simply reflecting on what Ron's life meant to our own lives, and what our own lives meant to his. I invite you to stand as you are able as we sing For All That Is Our Life.
For all that is our life, we sing our thanks and praise. For all life is a gift, which we are called to use to build the common good and make our own days glad. For needs which others serve, for services we give, for work and its rewards, for hours of rest and love, we come with praise and thanks. For all that is our life. For sorrow we must bear, for failures, pain, and loss, for each new thing we learn, for fearful hours that pass, we come with praise and thanks. For all that is our life. For all that is our life, we sing our thanks and praise. For all life is a gift, which we are called to use to build the common good and make our own days glad.
Please be seated. Immediately after the service, we will inter Ron's ashes in our memorial garden, as was Ron's wish. The easiest way to proceed to the memorial garden is to exit the sanctuary, go down the stairs, and walk through Founders Hall. After the interment, everyone is invited to join us in Founders Hall, which is there on our lower level for our reception. But as this service of memory and celebration ends, let us remember the words of the poet. When I am dead, cry for me a little. Think of me sometimes, but not too much. It is not good for you or your children to allow your thoughts to dwell too long on the dead. Think of me now and again, as I was in life, at some moment which is pleasant to recall, but not for long. Leave me in peace, and I shall leave you too in peace. While you live, let your thoughts be with the living. So may it be. Amen.